Should the Padres buy? Should the Padres sell? Well, Derek, why don't they just do both? Why are we forced
why
to
not?
choose?
Get creative.
I feel like there's an all of the above option that doesn't get talked about enough, and this just kind of feels like one of those years where it's appropriate. And I think you and I are aligned on that approach, and you have more evidence of your stance in the form of a lengthy post that is available on the Sports Wrap page on NBC7.com. So we will dig into that. End of a road trip, beginning of the final homestand of the second half of the first half going into the All-Star break, and other items of note surrounding the San Diego Padres ahead on this edition of the On Fire podcast. Appreciate you being with us as always, and appreciate OG's sponsor of the On Fire podcast. Thanks to OG's for all they do for On Fire and the NBC7 sports team. If you need a place to get a burger, watch a game, have a good beer, get some pizza. I don't know if they're doing hot dogs. I should have checked to see if they're doing hot dogs on the 4th of July. If there's a
I'm gonna look that up right now, actually.
Independence Day menu item from our friends at OG's. They're always doing specials and adding to their menu. Great beer list, great food options. If you want a place to catch a game, tons of TVs and a bunch of locations around San Diego County. So shout out to OG's. Again, if you're looking for a place to catch a game, have a good meal, have a good beer, hang out with some friends, OG's is the place to do that. Without further ado, and maybe Derek will have the answer on the hot dog conundrum.
And then I'm scouring the menu now.
After the walk-up music. It is the On Friar podcast brought to you by NBC7. Pleased to be with you as always on a Thursday afternoon, the eve of the 4th of July. And we wish you a happy, safe 4th of July, however you are spending it. Hopefully it is an enjoyable one for you and yours. And again, appreciate you being with us on a Thursday afternoon or whenever you get around to enjoying the podcast. Glad to be taking in this Padres season with you as always, even if this Padres season isn't maybe as enjoyable as it seemed like it would be the first few weeks of the season. These kind of doldrums that have followed this team for the last couple months continue to march on in the form of a road trip that featured back-to-back series losses, and now they return home for 10 straight. Man, 2 days off in an 8-day stretch, then a long stay at home, then the All-Star break feels like what this team needs. And it is one on a list of needs that has various items, Derek Togerson, and we will get into that. And I'll let you take the lead here because we've gotten accustomed to whenever June rolls around, the trade deadline chatter seems to be front and center. Seems like every year. I would love for there to be a season when July rolls around and we're like, no, this team is good. They don't need anything. Maybe a long reliever or something like that, But
has it ever happened with any big league team though? Even the Dodgers right now, who have like 74 pitchers on the injured list. The Tigers, even who have the best record in the American League, are kind of like, well, what do we need? We need more depth in the bullpen. Everybody. There is no such thing as a perfect baseball team, which is why this time of year is so fascinating. Oh, by the way, no hot dogs at OG's.
That's all right. You can get yourself a good burger, slice of pizza or something.
But hot dogs should be kind of relegated to, I think, ballparks and barbecues, right? You can't just like walk around randomly, and Costco. Obviously, Costco. Yeah, that'd be the third. Those are the three places you want to get a hot dog. You can't just like randomly just go grab a hot dog like at a place, rolling around. Except, what was that one place down in Barrio Logan though? That's really good. Okay, I take that.
Barrio dog.
Really, really good.
they've, at least until recently, I haven't had Barrio Dog at Petco Park, but they were a fixture at Petco Park, and one of my favorite menu items at Petco Park. I've been meaning to actually check out the Barrio Logan location, but they do a great dog. But I
Yeah,
mean, Costco's
yeah,
a great.
Barrio dogs are fantastic. Okay. In San Diego, it's okay to have a hot dog in one of those establishments at pretty much any time. Other than that, if you're like in, Kansas and just going to get a hot dog, you're probably a serial killer.
And Mission Valley location, go to OG's, have a full meal, make sure you're stuffed, but then go to Costco, pick up some groceries and have a dog. There you go. Check every box.
Done.
I don't even remember how he got on the hot dog train. Bad job by me.
I think it was an ad lib, and I think it worked. And in this particular case, it worked.
But the issue is, as Big Daddy Trip 619 says, the Padres stink. The Padres need help. Trade deadline is just the time to do that. I just opened up the story on NBC7.com by Derek Togerson, published a couple days ago. The San Diego Padres 2025 MLB trade deadline blueprint. I am scrolling. It's still not over. I am scrolling. This is very detailed, as every Derek Togerson piece is.
It's 6 different trades, Darnay.
There's a bunch of options. There's a bunch of Padres players that are involved. Ooh, Spencer Jones. I like that. Oh, no, he wouldn't be coming to the Padres. Never mind.
He would temporarily be coming to the Padres.
I like the idea of that. But let me know what's in the mind of Derek Togerson as we sit here exactly 4 weeks away from the MLB trade deadline.
Well, everybody knows they need a left fielder. Everybody knows they need a bat, maybe 2 bats. They need a little bench help. They need length in the starting rotation. They probably need a little more bullpen help, right? Because just not that the fact that the guys in the bullpen have been bad, they're gassed. They just need reinforcements down there. But the offense is absolutely it must be addressed, because you can't continue going on like this. I mean, in that series against the Phillies in the 3 games, they had 18 hits, which you think that's really good, until you realize 16 were singles and 2 were doubles, and not a single home run in a ballpark that is very conducive to hitting home runs. Now, I know the Phillies pitching staff is really good, but somebody's got to run into something at some point in that park, because it's a really good hitter's park, right? I mean, I feel like, Alexis and Moira on Schitt's Creek, like I said singles night, not singles week. You can't just be doing hitting the singles for an entire week. That's not good. So they need some slug. That's the bottom line. If AJ does nothing else, because it looks like Darvish is on the way back, hopefully Michael King will not be too far behind him, although that's looking more like maybe August, September kind of thing for King. But Darvish maybe directly after the trade deadline. That would be, the All-Star break. That would be amazing. The pitching staff might be okay, although finding an arm would be great. The paramount number one thing they must do is find a bat, preferably 2 bats. So, and also, I've heard from a lot of people that the new ownership situation, they would like to stay salary neutral, right? Which means they can't just go out and grab Luis Robert Jr. and add $20 million to the competitive balance tax. Even if they had the White Sox pay off the remainder of the deal, because they knew they're going to decline his option next year anyway, it still would go against the competitive balance tax. So I think the Padres are going to have to find a way to stay as neutral with the salaries as possible, which means you can't just go out and get Sandy Alcantara. That's another $17 million. You're going to have to find a way to get rid of some larger contracts to bring in some substantial pieces. Unless you're going with a really young prospect who's ready to go at AAA right now, and he's blocked at the big league level somewhere. I kind of looked at all those different factors and came up with a grandiose, this is living in Derek's La La Land. But it would be really fun. And if you look at it, it makes sense on paper. So I went through all of that and came up with this massive idea of how to reshape the Padres, by the way, by saving $11 million this year at the same time. And also looking toward the future, because you can't just blow it all up right now, because the Dodgers aren't going anywhere. That's the bottom line.
They're not going anywhere. And man, it feels like we've blinked and it's gone from Padres being 1 back of the Dodgers to the Padres being, I don't even know what it is. It was 8 the other day. But suddenly the Padres have kind of taken a stranglehold on the NL West, which is probably what we expected to happen at the beginning of the year. But it was fun for it to be competitive for a little while, and that is not the case. And the Padres are now in a position where they've kind of fallen on the outside of the wild card race. And there's about 6 teams. There's still time for that number to change. But about 6 teams that were within 3 games, or 3 teams that are on the outside within 3 games. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Padres now tied with the Cardinals for that final wild card spot. Giants half game out, Reds 1.5 out, Diamondbacks 3 games out. So we'll say 7 teams between the Diamondbacks at the bottom up to the Mets. You've still got the Marlins. I don't know how much you believe in them. Braves 6.5 out. That maybe still have a puncher's chance to get involved. But there's a number of teams that and that's another thing that kind of makes this interesting. How does everybody view themselves? I think I've even seen some Twitter chatter from D-backs fans that are like, all right, it's been real, but this probably isn't the year for us. They've just been ravaged by injuries. And so, what do the Giants have been sliding? What do the Giants do? The Reds 1.5 out. What do the Reds do? It obviously just took the series from the Padres. And I think, it's hard to imagine a situation where AJ Preller is not going to be aggressive, because you've probably seen, given where they are, I think we've seen enough from the Padres. And can AJ Preller, for the safety of his job, really afford to punt on a season? That doesn't look good. So
not with this kind of expenditure, he can't.
No. And so you feel like they're going to try and make some additions. Our buddy Lauren chimes in. I fear the Padres have more holes that can be filled in a single trade deadline, except for Manny. No one is performing, and there's not enough support in the minors. Trade or rise. See Suarez ASAP. I would add Xander Bogaerts to that list. Xander Bogaerts is performing, which has been great to see. One of their best, probably their best offensive player in the month of June. There's you can throw Manny in there as well. What makes this all very interesting is a bunch of needs. You mentioned the salary situation, maybe a little less in the minors to work with than there has been in recent years. So it is the perfect season, and you have the players available to kind of thread that needle between buying and selling. You mentioned the contracts. Season Suarez, I think, top of mind for fans right now. I think a lot of fans would be fine if they were able to find new homes for them. You mentioned Jake Cronenworth in your piece. Potentially a rise. There are guys that they could move on from, especially in the case of Season Suarez. You get something serious in return, maybe fill some of those needs. And if you brought in Alcantara or somebody with some salary to them, shedding some of those other guys will help you get to that salary neutral spot that you referenced.
And trading Dylan Cease, just when you say those words and it sounds stupid, right? Because I even double checked myself. I'm like, do you really believe what you're writing right now? And the bottom line is, like, we've reached a point where the stuff, top 15 in baseball, pure stuff, is not matching the results. I don't know what is going on. I don't know what the deal is. I don't know if it's a mental block. I don't know. I don't get it. I love Dylan Cease. He's a great guy. He's got an incredible stuff. He can throw a no-hitter every time he walks on the mound. Problem is, it's been so many starts now that it's not translating. And I also looked up his career in the postseason. 6 1/3 innings, 11 earned runs. Never made it out of the 4th inning in any of his 3 postseason starts. So at this point, I don't know if, and we saw it twice last year, I don't know if I trust Dylan Cease to be in the spot where we need to go. So I'm very okay with trading Dylan Cease, because he's a Scott Boras product. He's going to be gone at the end of the year. He's going to free agency, and he's going to be way too expensive for the Padres. So right now you have to really consider getting rid of him. The problem is pitching staff's already thin. So you can't just get rid of him and not bring in something comparable, right? So that's why you got to send him if you can. Some team is going to look at him and go, oh, it's still Dylan freaking Cease, right? He can walk out there and turn around like that and go on some stupid bender and go nuts, right? So you can get something for him. You get a lot for him. And you can take some of those pieces, package them with some other things, and you can bring back a guy like an Owen Casey, who is going to be really ready to go. He's knocking on the door at AAA with the Iowa Cubs, but he's blocked in the outfield at Wrigley Field. And the Cubs have 2 of the top 15 outfield prospects in Major League Baseball, both sitting at AAA, both ready to go, but they can't get them up right now. That's trade capital from them. They need starting pitching like crazy. Maybe you can line up with the Chicago Cubs. Send Dylan back to the Windy City, where he had a lot of success as well. You could take some of those other things, you could package it, and you can bring back a Sandy Alcantara, who, by the way, I know he's struggling. He has 2 years of control left after this season at a very affordable number, especially with Eric Hosmer's number coming off the books next year. So you can, that'll be very close to what you do. Robert Suarez, you can trade him to the Phillies, who we see need all kinds of bullpen help. The starting pitching is tremendous. They can give you a young starter back that's not going to cost us anything, and it clears off that $10 million. You can package a bunch of that stuff and go get Yohan Durant, the guy who, again, after this year, only making 4.1 this year, and then he has 2 years of arbitration left. So he's a better closer who has more control. Maybe I'm going a little bit too pie in the sky here, but I see a bunch of different things that can come together to all make the moves to make it all work out. So you ask the question, well, if that's the case, then why wouldn't Phillies just go right to the Twins and get Durant? Well, that's why you do it now, right? You do it now so that they can't have that. You go out and get these guys before you have a chance, other teams have a chance to do this kind of stuff. That's why AJ's got to be really thinking now. Don't wait until the absolute trade deadline. Try and force some issues and try and get some things done to start laying the groundwork and control the narrative and control the assets everyone wants at the trade deadline.
I wonder, is it not already too late? Like, are we close enough to the deadline? And again, it is 4 weeks. It felt like maybe late May into June. Like, they pulled off the Arise trade last May. It felt like there was that window. And now I wonder if we're already in the window where there's negotiations, there's discussions happening. Teams might be more willing to kind of hold out and evaluate kind of their best options in terms of trade returns. So, I mean, that's, another thing to consider. Lauren makes another good point. Fans and management should remember 2023, how well they would have done having the traded Snell, Hader, potentially Lugo Waka before they all left, and maybe even Soto. And I think Snell and Hader are the ones that really stick out, because that was really the conversation. I don't know how many people were talking about Waka and Lugo at that point. But I think that's one of the great hindsight cases for these Padres, is what would they have done had they been willing to part with those guys at that point in the season. They did not do that. Things never got better, and they, of course, missed out on the playoffs. And it feels like that is a lesson that they should certainly have in mind in this instance. And you mentioned Cease, the likelihood of you not being able to keep him around. Suarez just has not been as reliable. Meanwhile, I'm not saying Adrian Morejon should be your closer. Morejon has been phenomenal. You've had to really ride Jason Adams. So, you'd have to kind of figure out who that guy is. But they've also, pre-Hader, AJ Preller did a great job with cost-effective closers. And in many cases, those guys were all-stars. They might not have been top of the league, Rosenthal, Melanson, Rogers, good, reliable for the most part.
Kirby Yates, Brad Hand, yeah.
And so, maybe you kind of try and go down that path. So I don't know. It's an interesting case, but I feel like you have to really give serious consideration, especially with Cease. I mean, he's such a name, and any fan base, you bring him in, there's going to be some excitement. I don't think that's going to be hard to sell if you have to give something up for him. And the fact is, and I just looked this up out of curiosity, Dylan Cease, in his couple years with the Padres, his ERA plus is 106, 100 being, of course, league average. So he's just been a tick above league average as a Padre. 4.62 ERA this year. Martin Perez, just saying, had a 3.46 ERA after they picked him up last year at the trade deadline. So now, could you rely on Martin Perez at the postseason? Not necessarily, but could you rely on Dylan Cease in the postseason? Not necessarily.
Also not necessarily.
All that to say, there are cheaper options. You just want somebody that can reliably kind of eat up some innings for you, not blow up too often. It's not asking a lot at this point to find somebody that performs comparably to what we've gotten out of Dylan Cease this year, which is sad to say, but that's just kind of the reality. And you don't necessarily need a flashy name, especially with King and Darvish potentially coming back. You just need guys that can keep you in games and chew up some innings.
And there's a mental component to be considered here as well, because when you're the Padres and you see how good Dylan Cease can be, you expect to win the games he starts. You're walking out there on this day against pretty much anybody else in the game. we have the advantage. And when that doesn't come to fruition and he's walking off the mound in the fourth inning because he threw 90 pitches and walked 4 guys and just couldn't figure out a way to get anybody out because he's getting too much at the strike zone and giving up a couple of home runs, that hurts you mentally because that guy right now was supposed to be your stopper. That's the dude. That's your guaranteed win for that week. Even if he doesn't get the W himself, he keeps you in the game and you have a chance to win that one through a couple guys out of the bullpen and get a couple of late knocks. That's the problem here, as well as when Dylan Cease is not throwing well and the guy who was right now your de facto ace is, out of pocket and he's out of sorts and he's not looking like that guy, that messes with your head because now you're thinking, well, shoot, now we got to win tomorrow. That just starts to compound the pressure on each and every one of these other guys in the rotation and even in the guys who are swinging the bats. So having that guy who's your stopper not being your stopper, that hurts in more ways than you even know, and a lot of it's up here.
For sure. I was sad that Matt Waldron had a tough one. I was excited to have
all over the place.
I was excited to have the knuckleballer back, and he was so good for a stretch last season. And I'll always like the idea of Matt Waldron, but the fan base certainly seemed done with him in the midst of that first game against the Phillies. And
it's one game. How many blowups did Tim Wakefield have? And he went out and would, 8 shutout the next outing. The knuckleball is a mercurial thing. All right. It's a mysterious mistress. You just don't know what it's going to do day in and day out. But some days it's the most amazing thing ever. Some days you just don't want to touch it.
Yeah. I would love to see him back again. I would love to see him get into a groove like he did last year, but we'll see about that. But that bummed me out this week because I was really excited to finally see Matt Waldron again this season. Another need, you mentioned left field. I think something's got to be done at the catcher position. Luis Campusano continues to rake for El Paso, but it seems like they're done with the Luis Campusano.
Campy's a great 4A player.
Yeah. MLB Trade Rumors has a piece, Padres seeking upgrades at catcher, and they list a handful of options. And in a market where maybe it doesn't seem like there's a ton of options, but maybe, again, going back to, similarly to having guys that you can part with that might be attractive to other teams or at least help them fill needs. If there's a team that is maybe concerned about sacrificing some catcher depth, that might, make them apprehensive about parting with one of those guys. Maybe you can sell them on the promise of Luis Campusano to do a catcher swap of some sorts. Bring in a guy here that they might not have as much use for, that the Padres would get a lot of work out of. And they've got the safety net of potentially Luis Campusano, who seems like a, as much of a change of scenery candidate as we have seen in the modern era of San Diego Padres baseball. Seems long overdue at this point for both the club and for the individual. And so I wonder if that could be a logical move. But going with Diaz and Maldonado at this point, when you're not getting star level productivity from enough of your stars, hint, Fernando Tatis Jr., also Jackson Merrill, they need an upgrade at that spot. This is not one of those seasons, and this is not one of those lineups where you can deal with a black hole nearly daily in that spot, because there's too many spots that are underproducing. And so, I think that's right up there with or close to left field in terms of an area of need.
Yeah, it's again, they're great behind the plate and they're great with the pitching staff, but it's since the other guys in the lineup are not giving you that protection that you can have a hole in the lineup at the number 9 spot, it needs to be addressed now. And who's available as a catcher is the problem. There's no, what is it, like a Gary Sanchez, bring him back? Obviously, he was great for the Padres.
I can mention the names that they've listed: Clear Sellers, the White Sox, and I don't know. I couldn't tell you much about these guys. Kyle Teal, Edgar Caro.
Kyle Teal's one of the best young catching prospects in the game. He was just a top 5 catching, but if they trade him, they're even dumber than I thought they were.
Marlins, Agustin Ramirez, Rockies, Hunter Goodman.
Okay, they're guys.
Joey Bart, from the Pirates.
Joey Bart got run out of San Francisco on a rail.
Let's see. A's. Apparently, according to Rosenthal, no interest or intention in trading Shea Langoliers.
No, that's a guy I would be interested in.
Atlanta, Drake Baldwin ascending, and this is a guy that's come a bunch. Sean Murphy, 619 Cam, chime in. It's time to sell and buy and cut ties with Cease. Can't be Wandy and Suarez. Can the Padres package a deal to try and get Ozuna and Murphy? Murphy's come up a bunch.
What are Murphy's numbers right now?
Let's look at that.
Because I know Ozuna is an expiring contract. So on I think his power, definitely his power's down a little bit this year, but he's walking a ton, probably because Acuna just got back in the lineup. He just hasn't really, been that guy who people are pitching to all that much. And Murphy's he's got a 225 batting average, 788 OPS, 12 homers. She's certainly an upgrade of what the Padres have right now.
Bounced back from his, all-star season in 2023, first year in Atlanta, a down year last year. And then I think he got hurt last year. Only played 72 games.
Yeah, he was dinged up last year. Was it Travis d'Arnaud they had for a while last year?
117 OPS plus.
No, he is signed through 2028 at $15 million per, with a club option for 2029. He's only 30 years old.
Nice to have a guy you could just slot in there. Feel pretty good about.
That'd be great. But then we're running up against the salary thing again.
Yeah.
It's because neither Maldonado nor Diaz is making anywhere near that.
Well, and the Braves, and that's where the buyer-sellers thing is interesting, because the Braves probably are not a candidate to bring on a Cease or bring on a Suarez at this stage in the season, when, again, they're probably going to be sellers. And so you got to find one of those teams like the Phillies, a great example, potentially for Suarez, who, they're trying to fill needs for a playoff push. Braves do not appear to be in that position. So I'd imagine
they're not going to take on a couple of expiring contracts like a Cease or a Suarez to give up another one like Ozuna. That's a lateral move for them. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I felt like there were more. Gary Sanchez, he mentions.
Would the Orioles deal him with Rutschman? Because I know Adley Rutschman is hurt. So do they have any other catchers they can do they need him just as a body at this point?
Yeah, that's a good question. But again, give him Luis Campusano. So
there you go. There's a body.
There's your body in return. Young guy for a team that, they're still not close to being in it, right?
No.
And so, hopefully you can develop him.
But who'd have thought we'd be talking about the Padres and Orioles trade, and it would be a catcher, not one of their surplus of outfielders?
Yeah, seriously. They mentioned the Reds. They only control Tyler Stevenson through 2026. Jose Trevino's recent 3-year extension plus club option gives them a bit more stability long term. Ryan Jeffers, Jonah Heim, Gary Sanchez. So,
yeah, catcher's still a spot that it's isn't. Would it be nice? Yes. Is it absolutely vital, like a corner outfield bat is? No.
Yeah. Can we bring back Higgy? What's the situation with Higgy? He's making like $4 million or something this year, more than
6.5.
Oh, was it 6.5?
Yeah.
Having a bad year. Now, he was having a terrible year last year until about June, and then he started clicking, and he was incredible.
He's got a 215 average with 1 homer and 16 runs batted in. Higgy, what's wrong, buddy?
Not been the Higgy that we saw last year.
No. He had with the Padres last year, he had a 739 OPS. He's at 568 this year. That's why. And Texas ain't exactly a bad hitter's park.
His what was his home run rate was 6.5 last year. It is 0.7 currently for the Rangers.
So that's worse, right?
That is a few ticks worse.
But maybe, and you know what though? Hey, let's look at 619 Cam. Maybe he's having a bad year. Maybe re-energized being back in San Diego. And Sanchez might be the same thing. They had Higgy had the best year of his career easily here. Sanchez had the resurrecting year of his career here. Maybe there's just something about the sun, sea, salt air that makes them play better baseball.
And Rangers are, 2.5 out of it currently, out of the wild card. A game below 500. Would they be convinced to upgrade at the deadline? Would they be interested in a Cease or a Suarez, and in return give up Higgy? Now you'd obviously want more than just Kyle Higashioka, but see what else they have available and upgrade catcher, and maybe that's a landing spot. One of those teams that is kind of in that sweet spot of needing to add something if they really want to make a push for it. If they have some useful pieces in return. I don't know what their outfield options look like. Oh, Garcia. Okay.
I was about to say Adolis Garcia.
Garcia, Higgy. I don't know what their rotation or closer situation is.
We got in this series against the Padres, we got Rocker, Leiter, and Corbin, which is interesting because they also have Jacob deGrom, Tyler Mahle, whose name has come up a lot in trade talks, and Nathan Eovaldi got hurt, but they think they might get Max Scherzer back at some point, but they got one of those where they've got a lot of maybe older type of dudes, but pretty good ones. So I don't think they're in a position where they're thinking we got to sell. You still got Wyatt Langford, Corey Seager. They've got pieces there to win. And as we know, Bruce Bochy's one of the best managers in baseball. He's a Hall of Famer. Without blinking. He's a first ballot Hall of Fame manager who we love here. So, maybe it's one of those where you're like, all right, listen, let's take our expiring contracts, malcontent, and take your expiring contract malcontent because they both play positions we need right now and flop them. That's maybe do something like that.
Rangers have the fourth best bullpen ERA in baseball, 3.34. So I don't know if there's a clear need for a Robert Suarez, but I don't know.
Yeah, they've got Luke Jackson, 9 saves. Robert Garcia, 6 saves. Sean Armstrong, 2 saves. Dane Dunning, 2 saves. Chris Martin, 2 saves. Caleb Bushley, 1 save. Jacob Latz, 1 save. Jacob Webb, 1 save. They literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different dudes with a save, and not one of them has more than even double digits.
Yeah.
So it's maybe having a clearly defined ninth inning guy might work. We know that Boch has done a lot of good work with one of those guys who he knows he can just, hey, Hoffy, here you go get him. Hey, Brian Wilson, here you go get him.
Yeah, it's a good point. If they want kind of that guy that they can kind of rely on. I don't know if Patricia is speaking for the Padres or the Rangers and saying bye-bye Higgy. But I'd be cool if that were the perspective of the Rangers, because he was a great clubhouse fit. Obviously did a great job with the staff, did a better job of controlling the run game, something that was an issue for the Padres the prior couple years. And man, when that bat gets going, it is a real thing.
They've got Jonah Heim there. So Higgy's basically the backup guy. And they got Tucker Barnhart. I'm not sure what his health status is right now, but he's another guy who was, kind of a big name prospect or bigger name prospect when he was with the Reds. So it's maybe they can part with a guy like Higgy because Heim's gonna be the more or less everyday catcher anyway. Kick in some of the money and we'll see if we can make it work. I wouldn't be opposed to that.
The more I talk about it, the more this feels like one of the more fascinating trade deadlines the Padres have had.
What's interesting is the options, depending on how creative you want to get, the options actually are kind of endless. It could be really fun to see. And this is going to be one of those, Darnay, I'm going to go ahead and make a call right now, where it's going to either be there's a whole bunch of talk about stuff and then nothing happens, or B, it's the most chaotic, all hell breaks loose thing that we've seen in a decade. I'm hoping for the latter because that would be really, really fun. Where they're like 22 trades on the final day, and you're just going, "Oh my God, what's happening?" I'm hoping for those because it feels like it's going to break one of those ways where either everybody starts trading with everybody else and it goes nuts, or everyone just gets kind of skittish and throws their hands up and goes, "I don't know about this. I'm not doing anything and sit on my hands." Yeah. I hope it's the latter.
Yeah.
The former.
Patricia was speaking for the Rangers, so bye Higgy if you're the Rangers, and hopefully hello Higgy if you're the Padres. I shouldn't say most compelling because 2022 you pull off maybe the biggest blockbuster in MLB trade deadline history and get Juan Soto, and oh by the way Josh Hader as well. That was pretty interesting. But just in terms of the options and being in this position where you can be buyers and sellers, and maybe you move on for a cease and get something in return, maybe you're able to kind of address left field and catcher, see what the rotation looks like on the other side. Is there a shuffle as far as the bullpen? Does Jason Adam become your closer? Is it, door 3, somebody new that comes in? I have, just like I never have any clue what AJ Preller is going to do. I especially have no clue what AJ Preller is going to do this deadline. When the pieces seem a little bit different than they were in the past, you still have, I don't think they're going to do anything with Ethan Salas or Leo DeVries, but you still have these wild cards in the farm. Some other guys kind of in the lower levels that could be potential candidates, but not the last year there was the obvious 4, whose names are now escaping me, with Marcy and Graham Pauley and who are the pitchers?
They traded last year Robbie Snelling and
Dylan Lesko.
Dylan Lesko, yes.
And
now they've been replaced by, keep your damn hands off my shortstop. Leo DeVries better not go anywhere. Ethan Salas, I love the kid. I've talked to him a few times. He's going to be an all-star catcher at some point. If you can get Sandy Alcantara for him, I would do that. Short of a guy who is a 29-year-old Cy Young winner, got 2 years of control and coming back from a Tommy John surgery and starting to look closer to himself, it's a no. And you got Cash Mayfield, the number 1 pick from last year, who has 49 strikeouts in 29 innings in his first pro year at Lake Elsinore. But he's had shoulder issues, so they're slow playing him a lot. Humberto Cruz is a 17-year-old whose fastball has gone insane. And then Boston Bateman, who might be one of my favorite prospects because he's 6'8", 240 and left-handed. And he's just your workhorse. He's already thrown 50-something innings in his first pro season after being drafted last year by the Padres at Lake Elsinore, running his fastball up to 97. He seems like a guy who you just want on the team because who's charging the mound on that dude? He could hit anybody he wants. It's not going to matter. No one's going to mess with him. That would be awesome. But he's also got pretty good stuff and pretty good makeup. So those are kind of like the top 5 guys. After that, it's a whole bunch of, Cobb Hightower, who was a high pick out of Tennessee, who you look at him go, might be a good power bat in the middle of the infield, or he might flame out. You just don't know, So it's those top 5 guys, I think, are ones you can really kind of look at. DeVries, no. People are going to want to talk about those other 4. And if you're willing to deal one of those 4, you're going to get something really good in return.
Just looking at another guy, there was some Twitter chatter about the other day because he had a nice game that we've discussed at various points on this podcast, but especially with the John Coniffs of the world. But then, never seems to materialize. Oh, he's hitting 282 against lefties with a 762 OPS, solid. Are we ever going to see Brandon Valenzuela? I just texted John Coniff, Brandon Valenzuela, ? Oh, there we go. John answered back. Hi, John.
John's always good at
that. He's having his most successful stretch offensively in a long time. So I just sent him a return. So ... as we assess,
are you talking about him as a trade piece or to bring him up to be the catcher?
Like, could he get a shot? Maybe not to be the guy, but if you're overhauling and maybe you bring in a veteran like a Gary Sanchez and you bring up Brandon Valenzuela, who's in San Antonio, has he has he ascended? He hasn't reached El Paso, has he?
I'm looking it up right now. I knew he was swinging the bat well at Double A.
Yeah. Was oh no,
yeah,
he was
in the Texas League
last year.
781 OPS, 11 homers.
He had 27 games with El Paso last year, hit 195 with a 526 OPS. So he has been there. He's been in San Antonio this year, and he's hitting well. 24 years old. I feel like we've been talking about Brandon Valenzuela since we started this podcast in 2019.
Well, he signed in 2018. Yeah.
So there you go. So
that's when I'd be up for it. Just at this point, what do you have to lose? Bring the kid up, see what he's got, or at least give him a promotion to AAA to get him at AAA. You're going to face some guys who have been in the major leagues and have better stuff. You're going to find or maybe not better stuff, but a better approach and better understanding of how to attack hitters and find their weaknesses that you're going to find at Double A. Get him a cup of coffee there, see how he handles it, and if he has any kind of success, bring him up. You're not going to get anything less offensively than you're already getting right now. Yeah. So, why the heck not?
I agree. I mean, is he going to be worse than no shade to Brett Sullivan, but is he going to be worse than Brett Sullivan? No. Brett Sullivan wasn't tearing it up. So, I'd be curious why they wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, John mentioned he really struggled in El Paso last year. Well, that was last year, John. He's clicking now. Seems like a good time to test him a little bit. So we'll see. We'll see if they go that route.
Well, you do have that. There's a catcher at AAA who's crushing it right now. It's Luis Campusano. Never mind. Then you got Rodolfo Duran and Cody Roberts, Brett Sullivan. Those are your catchers at AAA. So let's look to AA. And that's where we're going to find Brandon Valenzuela. So awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right now, the answer probably is not in the system unless it is, unless it's Solace, and he's still a couple years away. And that stress reaction in his back has certainly not helped his development.
No, not at all. Anything else on the trade front?
I think if you're going to, this whole salary thing's messing with me. If you're going to find somebody to play the outfield spot and maybe even the catcher spot, I think this is where the buying and selling comes in. I think they should look, like I said a little bit earlier on the podcast, to teams that have big league ready, top, highly rated or regarded prospects who are ready to step in and get their shot now. Because it's going to be cheaper now and in the long run, and you just might harness something that we saw like a Jackson Merrill kind of situation, right? Or when Will Myers came up for the second half of the year when he was a rookie in Tampa Bay and absolutely caught fire and helped the Rays, reach the playoffs going down the stretch. You just might find somebody along those lines. Again, like an Owen Casey or, if the White Sox want to deal Kyle Teal, which I have no idea why they'd want to do that, but sure, great. Go out and get that dude. Some of these guys who Shea Langoliers, so there's a track record. You can see it. You can see the talent. You can see it coming. You can see it's going to play at the big league level with some capacity. I think if you're looking at finding more offensive pieces, maybe don't just stick to the Cabrian Hayeses and Brian Reynoldses of the world and the Adolis Garcias, who has shown flashes but isn't happening for him right now. Get the next great thing. Take a gamble on some of this. That's kind of how the buying and selling thing works. I would be actually energized to see something like that happen.
100% agree. And cheaper, more controllable, younger. It seems like boxes they've needed to check on this roster for a long time. 619 Cam. How about Buxton and Jeffers from Minnesota? Jeffers on a 1 year, I think, and Buxton controlled through 2028 or so.
I love Byron Buxton. I love that. I've loved him since he was drafted.
I think he's been one of those most coveted random big leaguers by the Padres fan base for a long time. Brian Reynolds also feels like a long-time potential future Padre. Byron Buxton has had that feel for a few years now.
Buxton, $15 million per year through 2028, which for that guy is not much, but he's going to have to be healthy. That's, and again, team captain, great clubhouse guy. When he's healthy and swinging the bat well, he's a force. One of the best, most fun to watch defensive center fielders I've seen in a very long time. You can take him in center, move Merrill to left. Now look at your defensive outfield. Good luck letting anything drop among those guys. I would love it. I would love it. But again, you're going to have to deal a contract to make that happen. And that's where the problem comes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. I don't know. Twins are 4.5 out of the wild card. Like, are they really going to be interested in taking anything on?
Well, that's the thing. And that's why a lot of these teams have not clearly defined what they are yet. And rightfully so. Adding that one extra wild card or the 2 extra wild cards has changed everything, because now instead of at this point 14 teams knowing they're out of it, it's 7 teams who know they're out of it. So all these other teams, the Diamondbacks are a team that keeps coming up. Like, what are they? Do they believe they can get back into it? Or do they think like, hey, we're going to have to punt on this because we know we're not catching anybody in the National League anyway? But if they sneak into the playoffs, 2 years ago, they have proof there's a 6 seed. You can go to the World Series. They did it themselves. Yeah. So it's these teams are going to have to figure out, again, what they are and what they want to be. Do they feel like if they get in, they can be dangerous, so it's worth going all in? Or do they feel like even if they do get in, it would be a bit of a fluke and they just don't feel like contenders, but they've got enough pieces to retool and go get something and go after it next year? So once these teams, the Twins, the Diamondbacks, the Royals, a bunch of these teams that are kind of like in no man's land, once they define what they are and want to be, then they'll know what the trade market actually looks like. And sometimes a team like the Padres has to go to them and say, this is what you're going to be because we're offering you this deal and you cannot pass this up because you're stupid if you do. So sometimes you can define what that is for another franchise by offering them, making them a Godfather offer. That they're like, man, if we can get this guy in the system. The Royals have no power anywhere. Cal Raleigh only has like 14 fewer home runs than the Royals. The entire Royals roster. They've got to get power in that system somehow. So if you can find a way to get them some power hitting prospects, guys who are close to major league ready, they'd be stupid not to look at it, right? For maybe Chris Bubik, one of their young pitchers who's having a breakout season. Like they have to look at this kind of thing.
And what's interesting is, teams that we've mentioned, the Rangers and the Diamondbacks as what are they? What is their approach going to be? Well, we see them, and it's particularly interesting with Arizona going against the Padres for 4 straight games. Like, that's a series. If it really goes sideways for one of the teams, might also help them define their approach going forward. And the Rangers make me think of, you remember who the Padres faced right before the deadline in 2023 when they were trying to figure out who they were? They faced the Texas Rangers and swept that series, and everybody got all excited. Okay, the Padres are for real. Statement series. Let's be buyers or at least not sellers at the deadline. They weren't sellers. The season never turned around, and that has to be one of the big regrets going forward. So it's like these couple weeks can tell you something, but you also have to take like the full body of work into consideration as well, and not just see what you want to see based on like a small sample here or there, because that's what kind of doomed the Padres a couple years ago. And so it's going to be interesting, these series here coming up. Who do they have after the
Phillies for 3 into the All-Star break?
Between the break and then the week and a half, they go to the Nats, they go to Miami. Wow, it's go straight from 10 straight at home to the All-Star break to 10 straight on the road.
It's the Comic-Con road trip.
There we go.
That's what they call it. They do it every year. They have to be out of downtown San Diego that long because Comic-Con comes in here and takes over the world.
Nats, Marlins, Cardinals, then at home against the Mets leading up to the deadline.
Oh, wow. So Juan Soto will be in town coming to the deadline. That's way to go, Major League Baseball. Thanks for that one. That's not coincidental.
It's just great storytelling right there. That's good writing.
Good Lord. Sometimes, right when I think that Rob Manfred and his little cronies don't have any personality whatsoever, they do something like this. I'm like, okay, yeah, guess what? Yeah, you do have a sense of humor, but it sucks.
What's Casey have to say? Also, National League West teams like Padres, Giants, Diamondbacks have to beat the Dodgers, which is a harder challenge than the Central Division teams. Another thing to take into consideration. There's not that path
Yeah.
probably to a division title, but that's where that um, extra wild card spot comes into play, which I do like. I every so often I hear people complaining about it, but I do like it in the sense that more teams feel like they have a chance, so more teams
Yeah.
are going to want to be aggressive, and I think that that's a win for the league as a whole. I think the flip side is, okay, maybe you don't feel like you have to be quite as good to get into the playoffs, but I think that, to me, and I might be wrong about this, but to me that is outweighed by more teams feeling like, okay, we're gonna stay in it and not be sellers.
Well, also, I hear people talk about this like when a team like the Packers in 2010, they're 9-7, and they get in the playoffs basically because the Bears on the last day of the regular season, they sit everybody. But guess what? Halfway through the year, their entire defense got healthy and Aaron Rodgers got hot. So they go and win the Super Bowl. People, oh, they shouldn't even have been in the playoffs. Well, it doesn't matter what you are for the first part of the season. If you change your roster and you get healthy and you are the best team by the end of the season. So what you're getting here is a lot of these teams of these number 6 play. I think more number 6 seeds have gone to the World Series than number 1 seeds since they started this playoff format. That's how crazy it's been, because a lot of these 6 seeds are not the same team when they start the season 50-50 than they are when they finish it 93 and whatever, 90 and 60, whatever it is, 71, whatever the number is, because they make all these deals, they make these moves. So the team is always evolving to try and be the best team it can be at the end of the year when it matters the most. So yeah, I like having more teams available because it makes more teams, it forces them to become the best versions of themselves as the year goes on. So I think it's fantastic for the game and for competitive balance.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, winding down. A couple things I thought we'd spend some more time on, but that's all right because this trade conversation has been very interesting. Hey, Manny Machado, all-star starter at third base. Very cool.
Congratulations, Manny. Well deserved.
I think third all-star appearance with the Padres, 7th overall. No brainer. Great to see him have the first half that he's had, because he's also been a guy that in the past, like, I think there's been a couple years where like he could have been, now 2020 could have been an all-star, no all-star game that season. Some seasons where he kind of picked things up as the year went on. If the all-star game was at the end of the year, like the NFL, he probably would have been an all-star, but maybe was not in that mode the first half of the season. So good for him. And oh, hey, Xander Bogaerts, last 20 games, starting after that game where at Dodger Stadium, he tied it up. They ended up losing. 333 average, 889 OPS. Only 2 homers. But how cruel is it that Xander Bogaerts kind of becomes Xander Bogaerts again, and everybody else is, other than Manny Machado, is just terrible.
A lot of doubles. I'll take a lot of doubles. Plus,
Yes.
I've been looking at his exit velocities and they're up. So he's hitting the ball hard. And again, this is what you got to do, man. Keep hitting the ball hard, and eventually a couple will carry out. And by the end of the season, if you do that over the course of the season, you'll have 20, 25 homers and everything's going to be okay. Yeah. Just keep hitting the ball hard. What I also liked about it is a couple of those swings, Darnay, it looked like he was invested in the swing. Like he's starting to cut it, like we've been talking about. He's starting to cut it loose, not every time, but just a little. When he sees something he knows he can handle or he guesses right and he's looking for it, he's starting to let it go a little bit. And that approach I like from him a lot.
No doubt about that. Padres were last in Major League Baseball in hard hit rate in the month of June.
Well, yeah, it's all singles. It's singles night. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. It's weird. Now I know they have Luis Suarez on the team, and he's going to bring down the average of the exit velocity and the hard hit rate, but you got Fernando Tatis Jr. They should even themselves out.
Yeah, well, Fernando Tatis Jr. hasn't been evening much out of late.
No, he hasn't been straightening anything out. He hasn't been knocking anything out. I don't get it. His first month of the year, everyone was like, "Oh, he's the MVP." Since then, it's like, does he need a few days off?
Yeah, All-Star break could come at a very good time for Fernando Tatis Jr. And also, this is threatening to open up a can of worms here. But a thought that I had is the quote that you bring back all the time is, "When my mind is right, I'm second to nobody." And I don't know if there was a reason for the timing of this, but maybe not file a lawsuit in the middle of a slump? Could that have waited till November or December? Did we have to do this right now? He clearly was not interested in answering questions about it. And it's just another thing on his head for him to be thinking about that is not him being the most exciting talent in Major League Baseball. Again, I don't, say what you want about this. I'm not trying to get us on this topic because this could be another hour of the show, but it's a thought that's crossed my mind. The timing of this is probably not the best for somebody that was already in his head.
I will say this very quickly about it. Kudos to him for doing this, because we have seen for years a lot of these Coyotes, they have been preying on on young baseball players for years. It happened to Toddy. It happened to his family. It's happened to kids out of Cuba, Venezuela, the Dominican, Costa Rica. It's happened to Panama. It's happened to kids all over Latin America. And good for him for going after them.
Certainly.
But I agree 100%. This lawsuit could be filed at any given moment. We're not in the middle of the international signing period when all this stuff happens, opened in January. So it could have been done before spring training. It's been several years since this has happened. The timing is incredibly odd. So I don't know what the deal with that is, but Darnay, I agree with you completely. Why do it now? Because all it's going to do is create more distractions when his head is not in the right place in the first place. I don't get it.
Agreed. Maybe a strange note to end on, but that was on my mind.
But you know what, though? That's kind of tawdy, right? It's like, you know what? Good for you. That's awesome. What the hell are you thinking? Like, you can say it in the same breath with him so often. It's just like, oh, it's so, because you sit and just talk to him. He's just the nicest, most the awesome dude to sit around and rap with, and engaging and polite. And then it's like, my baseball coach used to say I was the dumbest smart kid they ever ran into, right? Incredibly, I knew the game like crazy. Sometimes I would just say something off the top of my head because I got no restrictor plate between brain and mouth. And be like, what the hell is wrong with you? I think he's kind of like that. He's like me. He's like, we're the dumbest smart kids that you're going to find. Where it's like, what are you doing? Just don't do that right now.
Yeah, it's puzzling to say the least. All right. 10 gamer on deck beginning Friday against the Rangers. A Thursday evening game next week against the Diamondbacks to wrap up that series. So we'll figure out something for the pod that day. But appreciate it as always. Fun talking trade stuff with you. I feel like this is our first true trade deadline pod of the year. And
first week of July, I think is probably a good time to have that.
Appropriate time. And hopefully there will be encouraging signs for the Padres. Maybe they can make the Diamondbacks clear sellers at the deadline, and maybe that could be advantageous to the Padres. Perhaps the same for the Rangers as well. So get the wins and maybe expand the trade deadline market in the process. Could be a potential double whammy for the Padres. We'll see how it shakes out.
Just don't force them to trade Eugenio Suarez to the Dodgers. Just don't. Max Muncy just got hurt. All of a sudden, everybody starts saying, "Oh, they'll trade for Suarez or Nolan Arenado." I'm like, "Oh my god!"
Do not do that. Thanks to everybody for chiming in on the chat, and we will see you next week.